My guest today is Jeff Allen, who combines clean, hilarious humor like no other comedian working today. He regularly appears on television, radio, and venues across the country, and with over 200 million views on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, Jeff Allen is the world's funniest, most inspiring comedian. And Jeff's very successful side-splitting comedy tour, The America I Grew Up In, drives home the humor in everyday family life, the ups and downs of marriage, the challenge of raising children, and the bliss of the empty nest and the joys of being a grandparent. Jeff Allen is the best at what he does, making people laugh as hard as humanly possible. So let's welcome the man who can bring the funny, stand-up comedian, Jeff Allen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Doc. It's interesting listening to the intro. I had a woman reach out to me. She goes, "What makes you the most funniest person?" And I said, "My social media guy told me I was." So,
What?
What a shock! There'd be some hyperbole in advertisement.
Well, you can't argue with the popularity of over 200 million views. And, I watch all of your videos. And, even after a long day, sometimes I just pull it up on Instagram and just sit there and laugh for the next hour. So it makes for a great day.
Great. Thank you, Doc. Appreciate it.
Well, let's start off. Tell me about your testimony. And I watched a video of you. And let me ask you something. Were you really an atheist at one time?
Oh my gosh, my father sat me down when I was 14 years old and told me there was no God. And stay away from people like Christians. Stay away from them. They're bad people. And I believed in it, which was odd because his father was a pastor, his brother was a pastor. And my father turned his back on the faith when he was a teenager and decided to sit me down when I was a teenager and tell me there was no God. And I didn't give it any thought. I just kind of lived as, I wasn't an educated atheist. I couldn't hold it. It's funny in Peter 3:15, he says, have an answer ready for when people ask you about your faith and why the hope that lives in you, whatever. I said, I would never have an answer why I was an atheist. My father told me there was no God, so I believed him. And when I hit my 30s, I got to a 12-step program. I went in for alcohol and drugs, and they told me to pray. I said, to what? I said, I didn't believe in God. And they said, well, find something. So that kind of set me off on an intellectual search more than a spiritual search. It's interesting. I always described it as if you're thirsty, and I was spiritually thirsty, and I didn't know it. It's like if you gather water in your hands and you drink it, it quenches it for a little while, but then you're thirsty again. So I kept looking through self-help, New Age, Buddhism, all the stuff that was popular, certainly in the 80s. I read all the John Bradshaw stuff, Melody Beattie stuff on codependency, and I knew there was something inherently wrong with me. I was not a nice human being. So I wasn't nice to my wife. I wasn't nice to my kids. I was sane enough to not wind up in jail in public. But I had my incidences of road rage and at red lights. And it was really that. I just wanted to be better at being a husband and a father and a citizen. And I was miserable inside. And again, I always describe it as, I don't know if you know what it's like to wake up in the morning and you think, okay, this is a good day. And then this thing descends upon you where nothing matters. And I didn't know there was a name for it. It was nihilism. I really was a nihilist. I mean, I had no hope in anything or faith, and my wife would try to shake me into caring. I mean, she would say things like, I get the impression you don't care about we're losing the house. And I go, I don't. She goes, who says that? I go, well, you wanted honesty. I don't care. You think I don't want to care? Believe me, I wake up in the morning. I know what my responsibilities are. I just don't know why it matters to me. And that's kind of where I was for years. People would say, you need the higher power. And I'd go, well, if I'm making up a deity, that kind of makes me delusional, doesn't it? The made up thing works really nice in conversation. But if I'm on my knees in the middle of a storm like cancer, the death of a child, or a loss of a job, I mean, when life is really crushing in on all four sides, you need to know that there's hope And I don't know that, not by something I made up. So anyway, I kept looking and searching, and we lost everything. I mean, we did the house. We ended up having to sell it probably a month before they foreclosed. I had cars towed out of my driveway, because I tried to salve these wounds with things I couldn't afford. I mean, I was shocked they sold me the car. I mean, I went down there because we had nothing better to do, and I just thought for sure they'd run my credit and go, "You can't afford this," which I couldn't. So. And they hauled that away, and anything that mattered. It's interesting if you do the checklist, if the world's checklist. I had a beautiful wife who loved me. I know she did, and it's gorgeous. I had healthy children. I had a job I loved. I did at one time love it. At this point in my life, back in my 30s, I was questioning all of that. I actually took some temp work to try to find if I had other skills. And the funniest thing, I read where Domino's Pizza would if you were on the ball and sharp, they'd get you a franchise. You could start delivering and work your way up to owning a franchise. It was that good of a company to work for. So I thought, well, I'll start out delivering pizzas. So I got some 19-year-old with acne looking at my resume, and at that time I had 12 years of comedy, comedy clubs, casinos, nightclubs. And he says, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm a comedian." "What does that mean?" "Well, I tell jokes." He goes, "Where do you do that at?" I go, "All over the country." "How does that qualify you for this job?" I go, "Are you kidding me? I can find addresses in towns I don't live in. So imagine how good I could be finding an address with a pizza in a town I live in, And anyway, he didn't hire me. I came home and told my wife, I go, I'm unemployable. When you can't get a job delivering pizzas, I have no other skill set. So then she said, you might as well start trying to get this career back. And it was a hard time, the 90s, for comedy clubs. And if you couldn't draw people in, basically you were a babysitter for drunks. And that's what I had become. I told her one night I got good at something that matters to nobody. And anyway, I heard about a guy. I always said I trade my alcohol and drug obsession for golf. I traded it in. It's just as annoying, just as expensive, but it's legal, And Tammy grew to resent golf because that was kind of my sanctuary. I would all the stress of life would pile in on me at home, and I would go out to just hit golf balls on the driving range just to get away from it. And for that hour or whatever, I was able to convince myself that everything in life was good and mattered. And then I'd go back home and all of that would descend upon me again. And the funniest story was about the gerbil. I got to where I was watching my kids gerbil for a while, and Tammy comes and she goes, "What's with you and the gerbil?" And I go, "Look at it." She goes, "What about it?" I said, "It gets sticks on one side of the crate and runs them over to the other side and stacks them up. And when she's done stacking, he moves them back over there. And every now and then spins the wheel for a little entertainment, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a gerbil, but I would think that's entertainment for him." And she goes, "So what?" I go, as I project my life going forward, that's basically it. I buy sticks. It's a house, it's a car, or whatever it is. These are sticks. And I gather them up and take them to the landfill. Basically everything we have winds up in the landfill, and then we buy new stuff and all that. And if I get a good job, like I got a sitcom deal or a movie deal, we get nicer sticks. But in the end, they're all sticks. They're meaningless and pointless things. And if this is my life for the next 20 years, I'm checking out. She looked at me and said, "You checked out years ago, pal. You haven't been here for years." She goes, "You're not even here now." And she was right. She was talking to me and my mind was somewhere else. And I just wanted to know why. I can't tell you how frustrating and angering it is to wake up where things should matter, but they don't.
Right.
And I knew of guys that committed suicide in LA because they lost the deal. They were so close to getting the deal, and the rug got pulled out from under them. They just took their own lives. So I said, "Is that where I put my ultimate meaning?" Because she said, "Why can't it be us?" I go, "What if you get T-boned at a red light and you go away? You die. What does that leave?" I said, I can't. You can't explain it to someone who's not in it. You can't. So I heard about a guy that was doing comedy for about $100 a week. He was a millionaire, multimillionaire. And I think at this point I'm reading Ayn Rand. I finally decided capitalism. I'm going, maybe there is something to making money. If I can learn how to do that, at least I can keep the house and maybe keep my wife. We had filled out divorce papers, had them notarized. We never filed them, but we had them. We were ready to go. And I asked to be booked with this guy because of his access to nice golf courses. Because of his money, he could get me on Augusta National maybe, or get me on Muirfield Village. And so obviously God has other plans for us. So I sit in a golf cart with a guy for 4 hours. I don't know if you play golf, but you talk about things. So we got on the topic of accumulating wealth. He says, you don't want a lot of money. I go, what do you mean? He goes, you can't handle what little you have. He says, it would just be a burden for you. He says, you can't begin to enjoy the creation till you have a relationship with the one who created it. Wow. And I thought that sounded kind of new agey. That's kind of neat. Where'd you read that at? He goes, it's in the Bible. I go, honestly, I opened the Bible up in hotel rooms. I just never got it. I mean, I heard it was the living, breathing word of God, and I'd mockingly open it up and go, breathe on me, breathe. And anyway, we had a couple more conversations. He said something like, if happiness really was truly an act of human will, we'd all be happy. Who wouldn't will themselves happy? You'd stand in front of them. And that I understood because I've tried. I've tried to will myself to care. So we left that week. He said, I go to a church in Denton, Texas. They teach the Bible. That's all they teach. It's the Bible. I think you'd enjoy it. Would you mind if I signed you up for some tapes? I said, was it cost me any money? He goes, no. I said, well, then you can send me whatever you want. So, I mean, we left on Monday. I think Wednesday or Thursday, I had a Bible in my mail, and I threw it in the junk drawer. And then the tapes started coming probably a week or two later, and I collected those for a while. Over a year almost. And we had conversations as men would have about sports, about golf, about politics. And then it always got to this: how are you and Tammy doing? Not too good, Phil. Well, he goes, we pray for your wife and you at dinner every night. I go, why do you do that? He says, we just don't think marriages should, God didn't put you two together to just create life and then for you to move on and not be part of those children's lives. So we pray for your marriage. We believe it's that important. And I said, thanks. It meant nothing to me, And after about a year or so, we decided to file those papers. We were driving to the courthouse, and Tammy changed her mind about 10 minutes from the courthouse. So, in the end, you start thinking, if you don't think God will bring you to the edge. I mean, I drive 10 more minutes, file those papers, I lose probably the last 25 years with a woman I never knew I could love like this. I never knew I could love like this. I really didn't. And we went back home, and about a few months into that, it was summer and the break, she says, I'm taking the kids, I'm going to Ohio. Figure out what you want to do with your adult life. If you don't want to do comedy, don't do it. But Jeff, we're losing everything. You got to do something. And she gathered up these tapes. They were all in manila envelopes and threw them on the floor in front of me. I said, I'll listen to them while you're gone. So anyway, a week, whatever, I don't know what time it was. It went by. Anyway, I'm walking by, saw the tapes, and decided to open one up. And had a struggle getting in on those as well. It's just interesting to me when you think about it. I mean, it was, at one point, my brain chimed to me, it's just biblical trash. It's nothing, And anyway, I opened it up, and shockingly, it was the first sermon I ever listened to was on Ecclesiastes. So I heard meaningless, all in life is meaningless, and that's just what a nihilist needs to hear. So I go, that's true. It is true. It is true. It's meaningless. And the first sermon I ever heard, I got, life without God will have no meaning. Without meaning to your life, there's no purpose to your life, and without purpose, you might as well commit suicide. Summed up in one 45-minute sermon from a 2,000-year-old, 3,000-year-old document. My conclusions after 8 years. That was truth to me. And I felt if that was true, there must be other things in this book that's true. And I opened up another tape, I kept looking for Ecclesiastes tapes, but I think my two favorite books were Job and Ecclesiastes. So kind of tells you where my head and my heart was at 25 years ago. But ultimately, I got to Genesis 1:1, which I think Francis Schaeffer said was the most pregnant verse in the Bible. In the beginning, God created. That sets everything off. It changed Europe when, oh gosh, the Reformation. I just more senior moments. Uh, who's the guy that gave the Bible to the masses in Europe? The Reformation. Luther. When Luther gave the Bible to the masses, they read, God created. So first of all, when the masses realized they could actually read the Bible, literacy rate shot through the roof. Everybody wanted to learn how to read all of a sudden. So after that, they read God created. So after they realized God's a creator, I'm a creator. Entrepreneurship shot through the roof. All of a sudden, wealth wasn't just in the hands of the wealthy. It became something that the huddled masses could do. It's probably the most influential book. Um, it is the most influential book in the history of the world.
Well,
And
let me ask you this, Jeff. How long did it take you to win your wife Tammy back?
weeks, really weeks. And she went through the whole thing. I mean, I was, I was, I don't know if you ever heard of the cartoon Tudor Turtle when we were kids. Tudor Turtle. Tudor was a little turtle who wanted to be anything but a kid. Today I want to be a fireman. So the wizard make him a fireman. And he goes, Sir Tudor, you don't want to be a fireman. I want to be a fireman. Eventually he'd be in a burning building, everything crashing around him. He'd be begging the wizard to take him back. I don't want to be a fireman no more. I want to be a kid. So it's basically what everything I searched through was. This is it, baby. I got it. I got it. I read Buddhism. I thought, this is it. I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it. So initially, when I told her I was a born again Christian, first of all, she goes, "What does that mean?" I go, "Honestly, I don't know." I go, "I just heard the term. I got, but I'm to love you as Jesus loved the church." And she goes, "What does that mean?" I said, "That I know what it means. He sacrificed his body for the church. I'm to sacrifice for you." And she laughed because she knew how selfish I was. So I started going to church. I said, this is my thing. Like everything else in this recovery thing that I've been doing is mine. I took the kids with me. After a couple, we had one discussion. She was raised by a family who abused her that were churchgoers. So I understood her reaction. What does that mean for me? Are you going to be like my parents? So I understood that. And I said, again, not knowing, not being raised in a church, I had no baggage. I didn't know what it was. It was just another step in this journey to me. But something changed in me, something. And I knew it. I went to buy a Playboy magazine the day after I committed my life to Christ. And as I went to buy it, a little voice in my head for the first time in my entire adult life said, you can't do this. And I'm talking to myself. What do you mean I can't? All of a sudden, I had some guilt about buying something I've been buying since I was 18 years old, and I had to go back in the store and sort out what was going on. And oh yeah, I gave my life to Jesus last night. Is this the counselor he talked about? I will send you a counselor in the form of the Holy Spirit to help you with this life. I'm telling you, it was a weird feeling. It was like, again, I've never had, the new one's out. I plunked the $5 down or whatever, and I'd buy the new Playboy. I never thought twice about it. But all of a sudden now, it's, well, you can't do that. And it started happening in other areas of my life. All of a sudden, you start paying attention. So kind of with Tammy, her question to me was, if the children died tomorrow, would they go to hell? And I said, that's a good question. I don't know. Heaven and hell are not my domain. I said, look, babe, I'm just kind of starting the first steps on this journey. Something has changed in me. I know that. I felt it. And again, could be it'll pass. I don't know. But after a few weeks, she started coming to church with us. And what I knew changed when we sold the house. And the escrow lady said, all the money you made on the house is going to pay towards your IRS debt. And I said, it doesn't matter. I said, only thing that matters is sitting at this table right here. Tammy told me about 6 months later, we were eating dinner one night. She goes, I knew you were a different man when you said that because I believed you. For the first time in our marriage, I felt we were a priority.
Mm. Wow.
And that's 25 years ago, you know. And I could write a book on this last 25 years on the ebbs and flows of walking this, trying to walk this walk.
How long have you been married?
35 years.
35 years. And the last 25 have been the best?
Absolutely. We refer to, we meet people who met us. We met you like you were just married. Oh, we're sorry. We apologize. It was a different time, and we were different people. You know.
Well, how did you begin to weave your wholesome content into your comedy routine?
That started before. It's interesting. In hindsight, I think I could see God's hand in my decisions on a lot of things prior to my commitment. I had a fit one night. I had a heavy bag on the porch that I used to hit when this rage would come up. I would go out and beat on the bag. It was about 50 pounds, I guess. And I hit it one night and it fell off the hinges that was holding it. So I picked it up and started throwing it against the fence, and I kept screaming at the skies, just like a lunatic. And I looked back, and my family was standing at the door. The kids were 6 and 3, maybe, and they were crying. And as you imagine, it doesn't take long picking up a 50-pound bag and throwing it against the fence to get exhausted. And then I started kicking it. And when I got to the point where I got so exhausted, I just fell on my knees. And just, again, just why? Why? That's all I kept saying. Why? Why am I like this? Why? 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 And it's this cascading thing. It starts when I would overreact, and eventually the shame would kick in. And then once the shame kicked in, I was gone. There was no coming back. And that's what Tammy used to say to me. She goes, I never feared that you were going to lay a hand on me. It was all self abuse. I'd hit myself in the head. I would punch walls. I would harm myself. That's why I got the bag. At least that didn't hurt. And I walked into the house, and my youngest son, who was 3, came over to me and said, Daddy, you scare me. And I picked him up and held him. I said, I scare myself, son. And Tammy said, get out of the house.
Wow.
Leave. You live in hotel rooms anyway. Just get out of here. And I looked at her, and this calm washed over me. And I said, it won't happen again. And she said, BS. I said, no. Have I ever said that to you? She goes, why? I said, my father told my mother 1,000 times it'd never happen again. And it would always happen again. I never said that to you. I know I never said that to you. Because I thought my father was a hypocrite for saying it. And I didn't want to be a hypocrite and say it because I knew it would happen again. I don't know why I can say it to you now. I believe that was the moment when I was on my knees begging. I believe that Holy Spirit entered me. I had not made a verbal commitment. I have not. That's just my take on one particular evening. And what was, it's funny, I heard somebody say, I don't know if it was C.S. Lewis, that said, to the Christian, joy is central, suffering peripheral. To the pagan, suffering's central. And maybe that's a harsh word, but, and then joy is peripheral. And I think that's what switched. I've gotten angry since then, but nothing like what used to be a weekly, daily occurrence. Um, so to say I haven't been angry in 25 years is a lie. It's nonsense. But it's not consuming. It doesn't, I don't get lost in it. I have some control over it. Um, the self-flagellation is 99% gone. Still have moments, certainly when I'm tired.
Sure.
But I forgot the original question.
My original question was, how long did it take you to win Tammy back?
Oh, so
And
anyway, the 3 weeks, probably a month, maybe. She saw a difference, and but yeah, I think 3 weeks to a month she started, and then when she went through cancer, I got a chance to see her faith firsthand. Um, um, we were at a Gaither taping, and they laid hands on her and prayed with her, and it was a profound moment in our lives. So she got to bed that night and she said, I felt his presence and this won't be fatal.
oh,
And that was
amen.
22 years ago, I think. So far it hasn't been.
Wow. I mean,
Amazing.
y- you know, I know that the Holy Spirit, uh, sometimes I think the Holy Spirit hunts us down before we actually know the Lord. And like
Oh,
you said, oh, yeah,
yeah.
we can look
The Hound
back.
of Heaven, the poem, The Hound of Heaven.
Yeah, because
Chase
we
me
can.
down the alleyway. Yeah,
Well, we can look back in our lives and go, God was watching me then. And then eventually we get led to where we finally make the commitment and say, Jesus, come into
right.
my heart. I want to live for you.
Oh, that
And
was a question about cleaning up my material. That was it.
yeah, yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
I started cleaning up. Um, I saw a special with Andrew Dice Clay, and I looked at my wife and said, the next guy who's going to break out of the pack, I always looked at comics or entertainment as different packs, every level you rise to. And eventually, if you're lucky, you wind up, I just worked with Jay Leno last week, and I said to my wife, there's a handful of comics in the entire world that could just walk into any comedy club and they'll put them right up on stage because the whole audience knows who they are.
Mhm.
There's 10, maybe. We were trying to list them out, and Leno's one of those guys.
Right.
So each pack, and I saw Dice Clay, and I said, the next guy to break out who's working dirty, and I wasn't dirty. I cussed a lot, but the material was kind of the same of what I'm doing now. I just swore a lot. And we got called into school one day because my fourth grade son called his teacher a really nasty name. And I told the teacher, I'd love to tell you, I have no idea where that child heard that kind of language, but my wife and I were trying to make some change, and we were trying to clean up around the kids. And so I just said to her, I said, I wonder if I can work clean. And I started paying my children 25 cents for every bad word I said. And it kind of keeps you honest, because sometimes you're unconscious,
Hmm.
about your tongue. So I became really conscious of the language that I use. And uh, took me 6 months maybe to really kind of weed out and rework. And that's why I tell comics today. I have writers' nights at my house once a month if I can. COVID's kind of stopped a lot of that. But I used to tell all the young comics, I go, get a thesaurus out. We have a wonderful language. There's no place you cannot work clean. I've never been, there are people who don't think I'm funny, but there were people who, when I worked dirty, didn't think I was funny. So, I mean, there's 6 billion people. You can't please everybody.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever walked out on me because they were deeply offended by me. And especially in the corporate world, they care more about that than if you're funny. They just don't want to get a bunch of emails from people, about you. And that was the hard part when I was, I'm openly Christian. So initially corporations were a little hesitant to hire me because they thought, I said, I'm not a preacher. I do the same show for you. I do it, the improv that I do at a church that I do. And outside of that, the church, I do my testimony. That's the difference. And it's unless you want that, then we're just gonna get funny. That's the whole point.
Well, what was your defining moment in comedy that you deem as your breakthrough?
Dry bar.
Ah,
That dry bar brought me to the internet in a way that I'd never been. To put it in perspective, prior, certainly, well, I take this back. When I heard I got dry bar, I never heard of it. My wife, who doesn't watch comedy, watches dry bar, so that told me something. And she said it's in her feed every day. And then I worked with a guy that had over 100 million views because of Dry Bar. And I said, really? Holy cow. So I hired a social media guy who knows how to do that. And prior to hiring him, I had made 1,000 views, was a big video for me on my Facebook page. And within 3 weeks, he had one that went over 600,000. Same videos. It's just knowing what you're doing. So when I got Dry Bar, they told me 6 months they were going to release it. I thought, oh gosh, I could barely afford this guy. I was kind of hoping. But they called me a month later and said, we're going to release it. So I taped it January, February. They told me they're going to release it probably early March. And I likened it to doing the Tonight Show in the 70s with Johnny Carson, when Johnny tapped you on the shoulder and brought you to the couch. Overnight, literally overnight, things changed.
That's incredible.
I stopped doing clubs for 20 years just because I couldn't draw an audience. I got tired of babysitting drunks. And I started working churches doing outreach and corporate. That was kind of the crux of, and there were a couple of clubs I worked in a year, because they were good to me and good for me. I mean, people kind of knew who I was. But we're in the middle of a 50, 60 city tour right now. And it's all Dry Bar. It's the internet. Because I haven't done it. I auditioned for America's Got Talent, but they didn't take me to the live shows. So,
Wow.
I
Well, I watch Dry Bar all the time.
yeah,
And there's a lot of great talent there. And that's where I actually saw you for the first time, was on Dry Bar
right.
Comedy. I mean, I sit there on their Instagram page and I don't have to watch TV. I can sit there and laugh for hours just sitting there.
They have a great franchise. Great franchise.
Well, let me ask you this, Jeff. Who are some of your favorite comedians? Let's say besides Jay Leno, who else out there do you like?
Well, Brian Regan I was always a fan of his. There's a guy who's passed away that was really one of my favorites, was Dennis Wolfberg. Jeff Foxworthy. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't watch much comedy, and then I started watching it during COVID. I found a guy who's probably considered dirty, but I think he's, because I lived in Boston, a guy named Bill Burr. He kills me, but then I'm kind of still, there's this cynical side to me. And Tammy's got a dark sense. I mean, she kind of leans towards the twisted a little bit. But I like Brian Regan, used to just kill me. And now we're watching this show on Apple called Ted Lasso.
My favorite show.
Best sitcoms I've ever seen. I was sobbing the other night when he was filling out the divorce papers. I hope I'm not giving anything away, but when he was signing those,
I'm already in season 3.
Oh my gosh! Well, we're just finished season 1. We're gonna
it gets better.
Season 2
Yeah,
really?
it gets better. Ted Lasso is probably my favorite TV show at this very moment. Because there's so much real life there. It's funny, but you see a lot of human reactions. And wait till you see season 2. You think season 1 was great. Wait till you see season 2.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, when they're in relegation. Yeah,
that's right. Well, let me ask you something, Jeff, because everybody right now is talking about Dave Chappelle. And some comedians are saying that Dave Chappelle is saving comedy due to his recent special. Have you seen it? And then what are your thoughts?
Well, I haven't seen it. It's funny. I was telling my wife I want to watch it. I was on a plane coming from Denver. Well, actually, I went from Burbank to Denver. The next day, I flew home. And walking down the aisle, I saw 5 or 6 guys on their iPads watching the Chappelle special. That tells you something. When you got a plane of 100 people or whatever, and 5 people are watching the same thing, then it's, again, I didn't see many people laughing, but I saw them watching because I kept looking. There was a guy next to me on the plane from Burbank to Denver. He wasn't laughing a lot, and I was reading. He had subtitles, and I was reading some of it. I thought Ricky Gervais kind of threw the gauntlet down at the awards show when he called him out.
Yeah.
With very funny. Um, uh, I said, it's interesting the way I look at it. When we came out of the '60s, which had a very tight restraint on speech for comedy, '70s produced some of the best comedy we've ever seen. And I think that Chappelle is chipping away, and I think you're going to see more and more. But the hard thing is, it's not the fans. These people that are pushing back, and there's a number of them, just don't have the audience that Chappelle has. But they have audiences. It's the venues. What the cancel culture does, when they say they're canceling another act, they go after the venue owners. They go after the theater owners and their board of directors. They go after their LinkedIn accounts. They harass them to the point where they go, I'm not going to hire the guy. It's not worth the hassle. It's like with this CRT thing. It's just a shakedown.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's just the corporations are going, it ain't worth the hassle. They're going to harass my LinkedIn, all of our board of directors and all of the people on their LinkedIn accounts. They know how to do it. I mean, that's where it's out of sight of the people. They just go, oh, so-and-so got canceled. Well, no, you can't get hired at the theaters. So it'd be interesting to see where Chappelle, if the theater owners are willing to put him in, or where he works, because the audience is there. Louis C.K., the audience never left Louis.
Yeah.
Never left him. They say he got canceled. He got canceled. Well, sure, Apple dropped him. The corporations and the board of directors at the theaters, but his audience was still there. They still were fans. They didn't think anything of it. 10 years later, I mean, I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have people like you said, Ricky Gervais. And he tells it like it is,
right.
But we're all laughing because we know it's the truth.
Right.
Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, I thought that opened the door, and I thought Chappelle now saying what he said to ABC, NBC, he goes, if this is cancel culture, F, you guys.
Yeah.
And at all. That, to me, was the best thing he ever said, because that's what needs to be said. Who are you? I guess, if I got canceled, and we've talked about it. I mean, I don't do politics just because I'm in the business of trying to make 100% of my audience laugh.
Right.
And if you're going to do social commentary, you're not going to make, again. And then I also am one of those people who is such a contrarian at heart that even if I had a room full of people who agreed with me, what fun is that? I'd rather, I used to love Megyn Kelly on Fox because it didn't matter who she was talking to, left or right. She was a lawyer. She researched the other side of the argument and made you defend your argument, made you defend your position, no matter who you were.
Yeah.
And I thought that's the way honest brokers do business. So if I can't write stuff that angers both sides, then I'm not going to write it. And then on top of that, what fun is that anyway? I mean, I don't get a kick out. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
But if they came after me, I'd have no recourse. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, but when it comes to Dave Chappelle, he is so big, venues will never cancel him out because he brings in the money, and a lot of money. And my goodness, was it 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, when Charlie Sheen went on some crazy Tiger Blood winning tour and packed the houses out? He had nothing to say, but it was a train wreck. But they made money.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And again, I said they're going to weigh out the harassment the board of directors gets and the theater owners get, because they go after their social media account. I don't really read much of my social media. I scroll 10 or 15 and then that's it. Every now and then Tammy will call me in and she'll go, you got to do something about that. I had posted a personal video about the cloth masks, and how they don't do a darn thing. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Stanford has since come out and validated my opinion, which it was. I had a guy that worked. We were on a shuttle to get rent-a-cars, and both of us, him and his wife, had our masks down around our chin, and the bus driver slammed on the brakes and told us to put our masks up. It was just the three of us on there. So I shook my head, and he shakes his head, and I go, this is ridiculous. And he goes, I work at biolabs. That's what I do. I have to, we have a saying in the biolab. After you get all your suits on and everything on, if you break wind and you can smell it, there's a leak in your equipment. So he says, well, go home tonight, man. He says, put your mask on and break wind. And, so anyway, I thought that was funny. And I posted a video where I said, hey, you and your wife go out, have some Mexican food, nice dinner, a nice, lovely night out. Go home, put your masks on, and just let nature, happen. And then when the kids come in, what are you doing? You're doing science. You're doing science. We're learning something here, And I got hammered, just hammered. People thought I was making fun of the 500,000 who died. And
Yeah.
no, I was trying to poke back at the bureaucracies who make these things mandated, which they do
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. A
It's
lot of
just, again,
people.
it's another signal to the rest of the world that you're better than the rest of the world, And
Yeah, and there's people need to get a sense of humor today, and
yeah, yeah, I got something in my show. I talk about waterboarding. What did I say? My father used to give us what's the line? The setup is we've I know what it is. It's about waxing. That's what it is. We pay billions of dollars as a culture to have some stranger rip the hair out of our body by the root, but yet we won't let our military drip water on the faces of terrorists. People who want to kill us and end their way of life. And then I said, I think the CIA needs to start opening up some spas. That's all I'm saying. You know,
well,
and
tell us about your tour, the America I Grew Up In.
well, it's kind of just an observation, not a judgment call. It's just some observations. I'm writing some stuff now about the way we used to go to the doctor. We never went to the doctor when I was a kid, ever. My mom, if I had 104 fever, she'd crack an egg on my head. If it didn't cook, I had to go to school. You're fine. Stand in front of the drapes. We had these gaudy drapes, and she'd say, just let me check your color. You're not even close to forest green. Go to school. And the kids today, because of all these Google DIY, what made you think, intubating your son at home with a garden hose was a good idea? Well, I saw it on a DIY intubating YouTube video. I can't imagine being a doctor today and have to undo what these Google parents, these Google doctors did to their children. We never went. And then it was $5-10 a visit. I mean, it wasn't anything, so that's kind of, and it started with the playground. When I took my grandson to the playground and I saw the slide, that really kind of set me off. I said, this isn't a slide, it's a scoot. He would go 4 inches down, wee papa, pulling himself down the slide. And I thought about what we had. We had 6-story high solid steel, temperature 285, maybe 290 in the summer. You had to do 50 miles an hour. You'd lose 2 layers of skin if you sat on that thing, And people were responding, Foxworthy said something to me. I did his podcast, and he said, first time he did something about his marriage, he walked on stage and did something, and people laughed. He goes, gee, I wonder if there's other things that happen in my home that other people can relate to. And that's kind of what this was. It started with the slide. I go, gee, I wonder if there's other generational things. The car seats. I'm not against them, so don't email me, whoever's listening to this. I'm just telling you, I'm tired of strapping my grandson in like a NASCAR driver to go to the mini mart. I mean, we didn't have them. I walked the back seat upright. I was walking loose. I was a free range kid. I mean, yeah, you too,
Oh, yeah.
And again, yes, sometimes bad things happen, but
Yeah.
for the most part, and again, I'm not against them. I mean, and I put my seatbelt on, when we go out. I mean, I'm not, because it makes sense.
Yeah.
But hauling my grandson in and out, I mean, it would be a lot easier to just put him in a seatbelt. He's 70 pounds, 50 pounds. That was the thing I looked up. They wanted a 4'9" was the recommendation. And I'm thinking, to get out of the booster seat, which means the entire women's gymnastic team has to ride on a booster seat to go get their gold medals. I mean, it's these bureaucrats, and you're a doctor, I mean, I'm watching stuff now. They basically hijacked medicine and made it political.
Yeah.
Give it back to the doctors. Let them hash it out. I'd rather watch two immunologists debate vaccines than listen to a guy that hasn't worked on a live patient since 1973.
You
That's
said it.
that's the last time Fauci dealt with a live patient.
Yeah.
And he's survived for 30 years as a bureaucrat in Washington. You can't have principles and live 30 years in that environment. You can't. And it's not a
No.
slam on him. It's just so anyway, it's a different world that we live in. The
Yeah.
America I grew up in, medicine was
So you're
handled
on
by.
tour now?
I am. I'll be headed out to, where am I going? Pennsylvania, Delaware. I'm in Delaware coming up. And then, yeah, I'm all over. They can go to my website, jeffallencomedy.com. We post memes on Instagram, JAllenComedy. On Instagram, we post the memes with the calendar on it, certainly a month out so people can see. I post, videos so they can go to my Facebook page and just sign on.
Does your
And
tour go into 2022?
so far, yeah, I think
Okay.
we're going to change it. Uh, I'm working on a theatrical show, which combines testimony and comedy. I hired a guy, a good friend of mine. I did a testimony for a Christian Comedians Association. And he called me up afterwards. He said, I think you got a show there. I think you could figure out a way to. And I said, I can't. I've tried for years. I don't know how to. My brain doesn't work that way. I think more in terms of stand up.
Yeah.
Brevity's the soul of wit, get to the point, And so anyway, we're putting that together. I'm hoping to start bringing it out January 1st as a work in progress. Would love, if you got church, we would love to do it at your church. And Robert G. Lee is a great stand-up in his own right, been around forever. And he's the guy working with me. So we want to take it out together where Robert would go up and do 15, 20 minutes and I would do what we've got and entertain, and because it deals with salvation and restoration and redemption, I'd like to first do it in the churches to where I get comfortable with it. And then I would love to be able to bring it to secular performing arts centers and things.
Well, I think the time is right where people of faith like us go mainstream because
Right,
Jesus said the harvest is there. The harvest is ready. The harvest has been ready for the last 1,000 years, but it's time to break outside the four walls and to go mainstream and show people there's another way. But
right,
in this case, they can laugh at the same time.
right. Well, that's the goal. Obviously it's an entertainment evening, but if I had to pick a topic, it wouldn't be political. It would be salvation. I don't know how about you, but I was watching something last night. I think it was Tucker talking about that woman that was raped in broad daylight on a subway train in New York while everybody sat by and watched. And I screamed at the TV, "You reap what you sow. This is Darwin." There wasn't one man on that subway car that felt that that woman's life and dignity and self-respect and was worth risking jumping in and and taking this guy on. That's Darwin. The brutes are winning. The
Yeah,
strongest of us are now in charge.
that's right.
And if there was anything that the Christian foundation brought this nation, it was a sense of grace. There needed to be grace. We all need forgiveness at some point in our life. And there was an understanding that people needed to be forgiven. And there's not a lot of forgiveness and grace in this at all. I don't see it. It's certainly not mainstream anymore.
No, not
Uh,
at all. I mean, I
so
carry a
that's kind of
Savior.
what I'm hoping, if I could bring a message
Yeah,
to people along with funny and through our pain, Tammy and mine, our pain and suffering was that in the end, that you're right. There's a better way,
there's a
and
better
it's
way.
something that aligns more with what I believe truth is. That we were designed and created for a special purpose, and every child out there, every human being out there is a child of God, and they deserve our respect and dignity. Now, their choices don't necessarily,
Yeah.
but um, I can separate the choice from the person.
Oh,
The person
absolutely. Well,
deserves
Jeff,
respect and dignity.
yeah, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for spending your time telling
Oh,
us your story, because I know all of my viewers and my listeners are going to be so blessed to hear your life story for us today, because people need to know that there is a way. There's a way out, and we know that
yes,
Jesus is the way out. He leads the way out, but he also leads us into where he is at. And that's what we want people to know, that Jesus is
right,
Savior, he's healer, he's Redeemer and Deliverer, and he certainly did that for you.
yes, sir.
Well, ladies and
That,
gentlemen, that's Jeff Allen. And when Jeff Allen comes to a town near you, you need to go see the America I Grew Up In tour. Go to jeffallencomedy.com. Follow him on social media. Again, I personally spend time on Instagram just to laugh after a long day watching Jeff
yeah.
Allen comedy videos. And we all know that laughter is the best medicine. We'll be right back.